Good afternoon, friends, to this challenging session. What I mean challenging session is, after lunch each session is challenging. So, just bear with all of us that we'll be keeping ourselves awake and try to catch up with the technical as well. So, food for thought is more important than food for stomach also. We'll try to catch up with the technical thing, and we'll try to keep it as light, because lunch was heavy, so we have to balance it with the light version of the presentation. I'm told that today morning we have gone through this basics of transfer pricing, and I know that though it is an intensive study course sort of a thing, but still many people of us have already gone through the transfer pricing principles. Not that everybody is new to this whole concept of that. I am assuming that very few people will be that way in real sense beginners, because some people might be quite aware of the principles, why transfer pricing regulation was introduced in India, what are the general regulations, what is the object, and how they want to apply this in an Indian context, and how the present day circumstances are evolving. So I'm quite aware that many people have actually had some practical experience on dealing with transfer pricing issues. So though this is a fact that we may have to stick to the principle that some of the beginners, exceptionally who are doing for the first time, they should not be losing out on the methods part, because that is very important for everybody to understand how each method to be applied and in what way it is indicating the correct application of the methods. First of all, what is the necessity of methods? Anybody from you, I would like to make it lively session so that people can participate instead of just I speaking on one-to-one basis or one-to-many people. It will be better that if you can share your thought. What is the first of all need for this type of presentation and this type of methods? By general understanding of transfer pricing, what you might have learned so far, can anybody come up that what is the need for these methods? Anybody? Yes?
To determine the ALP arm's length.
Correct. ALP is what? Of what? ALP of? Correct? So you are quite well aware of what is the concept. So everybody is knowing what is transfer pricing. You have learned what is international transactions, what is associated enterprises. So transaction between two associated enterprises, which are termed as international transactions, and I am just leaving out SGT, the domestic transfer pricing. Of course, the definition would be almost the same, that way, with some exceptions around that. But basic thing remains that so long as there is international transactions, there is a mandate under transfer pricing regulations of India on the taxpayer to prove that these transactions which are entered into relevant period are at arm's length price. I am not going to the definition of what is associated enterprise, what is international transaction, what is ILP, or the people are aware of that. Basic thing is, once you have this mandate given in the regulation, the taxpayer is duty bound to prove to the tax authority that these transactions or international transactions are at arm's length. There has to be some mechanism of how to arrive at the conclusion. As you rightly said, methods try to demonstrate or help the taxpayer to demonstrate that these transactions are at arm's length. So it is a fulfillment of the duty which is cast on the taxpayer by the tax regulation that the transactions are at arm's length. With this background, we just move what are the methods and all that. We can do one by one. Today's session will be highlighting only one part of it. I may explain why there is some slide coming up. In that there are two parts. Just to brief that transactional methods and profit methods. We just do today transactional methods in this session. For sake of convenience, I just divided the presentation in these different parts only for understanding purposes. This I am not going to do because you know that what is the associated enterprises transaction with the other enterprise and how the method to be applied, what is the purpose of this determination of ALP. This is the slide I was going through, that when you talk of methods which are prescribed in the regulations, there are two parts. Of course, our regulations are not divided. This is only for sake of convenience we have divided. These methods should be classified in this type. First category, I am sure that you are not able to see the exact reading, you may want to print out, you can see. First part is traditional transaction methods or preferred methods. Second, transactional profit method, and third is the residual method. We are doing in this session the first part, traditional transaction method, which are preferred methods. There are three methods: comparable and uncontrolled price method, resale price method, and the cost plus method. When we deal with these three types of methods, before that we need to understand, as per this regulation, there is no preference or hierarchy of any methods. The regulations say there are 5 prescribed methods. Now the 6th one is other method under Rule 10 AB. Basically, we can say there are 5 methods. resale price, cost plus, TNMM, profit split. These are the 5 generally accepted methods, and other method is the residual method. One has to understand that regulations at no point of time say that first should test cost plus, then say resale price, then resale, then with cost another cost, that will come resale price cost plus, then profit split, then TNMM, which is not prescribed. This logic has not been given in the regulation at all. Regulation talk of what is the concept of most appropriate method. You consider the circumstances, the realities of the situation, the case-to-case decision making is required, and what are the judgment factors to be considered. Of course, that also will deal with in a bit. And what are the factors to be considered in selection of methods. All this taken together, given the circumstances, availability of data and information, taxpayer has to judge which is the most appropriate method. Not that curve is the starting point and TNMM is the end point. Nowhere in the regulation or act or even rules it has been prescribed that this is the preferred method. One has to decide on the basis of the circumstances, available data, available information, what is the analysis required, and what is the end object to the proof. And mainly driven by the transaction information also. So one has to remember this. In this sense, Indian regulations are in line with the OECD regulations, though India is not a part of or the member of the OECD. Then also India has accepted there should be no hierarchy of methods. Any method can be selected provided it is the most appropriate method. But that reasoning has to come in the form of a detailed documentation that may be that we discuss at the later session probably. That what is transversal in documentation. There the duty cast on the taxpayer is of these 5 methods you have to discuss each and every method, why this particular method is not applicable and why a particular method is applicable as the most appropriate method. So for all 5 methods, one has to discuss the pros and cons of selecting, and ultimately the taxpayer can reach to a conclusion which is the most appropriate method. If I am going fast, please let me know so that we can slow down the beat. Now I just mentioned there are various factors to be considered for selection of the most appropriate method out of these 5 methods and the other method. Section 10C deals with the provisions relevant to the selection of methodology. Now what are the factors one has to consider? Natural question is, when I say that there are various factors to be considered in selecting a particular method as the most appropriate method, there are various categories of the different factors one needs to analyze. Of course, this may not be in the state order what we have listed here, but broadly one can say, which is the bold letters I can say, nature and class of the transaction, class of associated enterprises, then availability, coverage and reliability of data. This is very, very important because it determines which method is going to be applied. Because something is ideological basis, something may be a most appropriate method, but if data is not available, it fails. Then it cannot become a most appropriate method. So however logically correct it may be, still if the data and information is not available, that method cannot be selected as the most appropriate method. Now degree of comparability of the transactions and the third party comparables. Here one has to again go back to Rule 10(2), which describes the comparability factors, that various transactions related and various other factors what need to be compared, what determine the comparability between the transactions to be tested and the independent transactions with whom they are going to be compared with. Now after reaching to this, one has to just decide, okay, this is the method and we apply this method and analysis is done. Sometimes there will be some difference in the results coming out. There is a tested party result vis-a-vis the third party results. In that sense, is it a conclusion that we are not as arm's length or we are at an arm's length? So before reaching to conclusion, one has to see whether any adjustments are possible. Now let us say third party information shows that price should have been, let us say $10. Instead of this, our information is, let us say $8. So is it the thing that one can conclude that Indian entity has undersold the goods to the related party, or there are some possibilities of making some adjustment to bridge the gap of the $2? So that's where it comes the reliable and accurate adjustments. Where we have to compare this, one needs to understand is why this adjustment is required. So each taxpayer we understand is a different player altogether. Everybody's balance sheet is different. The debtors, the stock, debtors, creditors, other liabilities, everything differs. The level of this, everything differs. Nature of business to some extent may be common, but still on the ground some different final points will be there. And when you are saying some average price of the comparables to be taken, it warrants that for bringing everybody on par, there has to be some adjustments. So there are possible different type of adjustment, account payable adjustment, account receivable adjustment, debtors that way, stock adjustments, all this is possible, working capital adjustment, just to bridge this gap. Whether, and then let us say in our example, when we say third party price is 10, our price is 8, we are trying to bridge the gap of 2 before reaching any conclusion whether our transactions are at arm's length or not. Then if after adjustment, let us say the third party that way price reduces to 8.5 and our price still remains 8, is it possible to conclude that we have undersold the goods? Only after making this type of different adjustment, one will be in a position to comment whether in a real sense the assessee or the taxpayer has undercharged the price to its related party overseas. So this is the import of the various type of adjustments. Now as I said, before deciding the method, one has to see, because in transfer pricing what we must have learned so far is there is a comparison of the tested product transaction, that is between the transaction between two related parties, which is to be analyzed vis-a-vis the third party comparables or external comparables. Maybe in that sense one has to understand what are the different comparability factors in selection of this third party comparables at all, first of all. Now let us say when you are saying the first category, comparability of controlled and uncontrolled transactions in terms of characteristics of property or services, because the moment the characteristics changes, one change in the characteristic can lead to huge difference in the pricing. So these are the generally recognized concept in OECD as well as our regulations. Our regulations also accept wherever there is a difference of this nature between one, now let us say an entity is producing a product which is capable of doing some 10 functions. If the other company, the third party comparables, a similar product is able to perform some 14 functions or more than that, naturally the price of that product, though in basic category is the same, still it is possible that price of that product may be much different or even higher. That sort of a situation can arise the moment you change one or two characteristics, very significant characteristics, it is possible that the price of the comparable can change. So one has to be very sure that when you want to compare these two different type of transactions, one between the two related enterprises and one between the third party comparables, maybe external comparables or even internal comparables to that extent, one has to see whether the comparison is valid considering these different categories of items to be considered. As I said, there will be some functional differences, risk differences. Now let us say Indian entity in case of related party transactions may not be marketing the goods abroad, because that will be the responsibility of the foreign entity. In case of third party scenario, we are trying to compare with the company operating in India, selling goods overseas. It is possible that Indian comparable only will have to undertake the responsibility of marketing the foreign country. Naturally, it has some additional costs and returns also. So one has to just see whether we are having some right to that right comparison first of all, before we do the transversing methods also. So if you are selecting some wrong type of transaction for comparison purposes, it is possible the results will not be valid at all. Forget about the adjustments and all that. Now, last is important from the Indian perspective also. Now, business strategies, these are important in the sense that, now let us say one of the Japanese car maker wants to enter in the Indian market. So what will be happening in the first year when it sets up the operations in India, maybe a trading company, it will not be having naturally the required market share. They are entering Indian market for the first time. There are already some established players in the Indian market which are having reasonably good profits. But when a Japanese company sets the shop here, maybe a trading company, it is required to incur some initial establishment costs. They will be required to take offices, new dealership network, new employees will be recruited, they have to be trained in operations, some marketing strategy has to be in place, they will be incurring huge amount of marketing expenses. All these things is warranted, and in the very first of 2 to 3 years of operations, that entity in India may not be able to sell the required level of product in the Indian market. If they are able to sell, let us say, even the required that number of products, is it possible to say that they will be able to sell at the required price? They may be importing, let us say, at $100, maybe one unit of vehicle is imported $100. If they have some huge amount of expenses to be incurred in the Indian market for establishing this undertaking, and if they are not able to sell this product at a price higher than 100, naturally, after considering all the establishment expenses, etc., this Indian entity is bound to incur losses. So that type of situation has to be there. In that sense, one has to analyze, if it is a manufacturing company, then naturally there is gestation period. If it is a capital intensive unit, one has to consider how much time it will be required for setting the operations here in India, generating the finished product, testing the product in the Indian market. This will be a sequence of activities. First we talk about trading company, when is a manufacturing entity, the process is still longer. So one has to understand what type of comparison. Now let us say if I have to analyze this company's results, Indian company results, which is a Japanese subsidiary, then that entity will be having losses. Correct? At what level I need to compare this? Because this is a, now let us say this company is subjected to transfer audit in India. So what will be the general conclusion that TPO can draw? Indian entity which is a trading company, first 1 or 2 years, let us say it is incurring losses. So whether it is possible to conclude for TPO that okay you are incurred losses, but there are comparables which are having positive average margin. So is it possible that TPO can say no, this company should be subjected to transversing adjustment? So that one has to select which is the right course of action, whatever comparison we need to consider. What is the strategy to be adopted by the company or the businessman, how they want to enter the foreign market or marketing their own goods, etc. That has to be taken into consideration. Of course, we can't here analyze all the business strategies. One example I am saying that market share, that is the penetration of market, this is one of the business strategies that needs to be taken into account while doing the comparability search. Now there will be data and information. What type of data information is required? Indian taxpayer of its own can have any data what is in possession. The question comes if there is a possibility of getting the data of the comparable companies first of all. Because now let us say Indian entity wants to compare the sale of particular product A with a sale of particular product B which is sold by a third party seller in India. So how to deal with this situation? We need to get the information of the other party, right? When we want to analyze our transaction, now let us say product A is exported by a company, Inco to a US company, let us say USCO. So the product A is sold at a margin, let us say. Now the task here would be given under regulation is whether Indian entity is earning a fair markup on this, the sale to the US parent. Here how can we compare that this price earned or the margin earned by the Indian entity is fair, that is, or the arm's length price. Only recourse open is we have to find out the data of third party comparable, maybe from use of some available databases. There we have to find out whether that entity is engaged in the trading or manufacture and sale of the similar kind of product. Maybe to which region one has to, again that is the dispute, at least one has to consider whether the similar line of business exists for that other company. Then our option would be whether it is possible to get the financial information of that comparable company. If that is not there, the whole exercise fails. We cannot begin with the exercise. So it is important to have this type of information, the third party comparable, the financial information, there is cost of sales, all this information will be very much required. Now important thing is when we talk of transversing methods, there are no different methods for compliance engagement or planning engagement. Now let us say we are analyzing the transactions for the year ended 31st March 2014. So it's a post facto exercise. Maybe for Indian compliance perspective, I need to file Form 3CB and documentation. For that purpose, I may be doing analysis. It is quite possible that I may be required to do a planning exercise, advisory sort of a thing for the client which wants to set up a undertaking in India or Indian entity wants to set up operations abroad. In that sense also, so for both the purposes, whether it is compliance or planning advisory, the methods remain the same. Under regulations also, of course, regulation is not dealing with planning as such, but I am saying when you come across the engagement from the client, we are going to use the same methods, though it is not stated in the regulation. Regulation is only compliance thing only they will say, they will not talk of the future. But for guidance purposes, ultimately, when taxpayer is going to comply with the requirement for the relevant period in the future, they are going to use the same methods. And important thing is, I am saying that defending means, when I mean to defend means, is a TP assessment or TP audit situation. If TPO wants to audit our transactions, the taxpayer transactions, international transactions, what methods have been used in the documentation, that will be first tackled by the TPO. That is, the TPO is expected to deal with the methods applied by the taxpayer before suggesting or objecting some other methods. Now, having said that, we just consider what are the three methods we are supposed to deal with in the today's session. I just request you to refer to this printout which is being handed over. We are given a very simple example here. Now let us say, instead of this first part, I will just say, just for introduction purpose, comparable uncontrollable price method by name itself This compares the prices between two sets of transactions. One is the related party transaction, the other is a third party transaction, uncontrolled transaction. So one has to understand by this example. Now let us say one associate enterprise on the left side, it says at a price $8, there is a control transaction between these two enterprises. Now this corporate, it sells to an independent enterprise at price $B. This is an uncontrolled transaction. So here what is happening, the corporate which is indicated in between, that is a common entity to both limbs of the transaction. It purchases from associate enterprise, it sells to a third party. So here, can we say that price $8 versus price $B, this comparison is possible? Because the product, what you are assuming here, the product dealt in here is remaining constant, there is no change. Identical product, that is corporate purchased from associate enterprise, the same product is sold to independent party without any alteration. Correct? So characteristics of the products are not changing. Whatever it buys from the associated price, same thing is sold to independent party. So what is sought to be compared is price A versus price B. Here, if at all we have to say that my price is almost the same, then one cannot say that there is any transversing adjustment required. It is proved to be at arm's length. What is the responsibility of corporate? Just to say that I am purchasing at this price, I am selling at this price, which can be higher than this price. Correct? Now here we have just to see what are the factors, because this curve method, when you talk of the curve method, is very sensitive to variety of things. What are the assumptions here? Product similarity, or the identical product should be there. In the earlier slide when we saw comparability factor, the moment one of the characteristics changes, it is possible that price also can undergo a change. So here you are pre-assuming that the product remains identical in all respects. That is quality, quantity, features, everything. But if you say quality and the product remains identical, but the quantity sold differs, what is the significance of quantity being different? Anybody? What factors can kick in? If let us say there is a difference between the quantity sold by related party to other related party, whereas related party to third party. For example, related party sells to other related party 100 kg, but another related party sells to third party 200 kg. So what is the significance of this volume difference? Correct? Is a normal common understanding. The moment you go to market and buy in bulk, which is a high quantity, it is possible that seller or vendor may offer you some discounts in price. In that sense, one has to see whether this comparison is warranted after taking the difference between the volumes. So these are a variety of things one has to see. When you talk of product comparability, we have to deal with not only the quality of the product, identicalness of the product, but we have to see the other factors also. There will be contractual terms also. Now let us say if I have applied it with same price, identical goods, correct? Same quantity also. But only thing is that when I deal with my related party, I give him the 6 months credit. When I deal with a third party, I give him 30 days credit. What difference is there in these two pricing differences is the price remaining constant in the actual sale price remains constant, but credit period differs. So when I sell to related party, I am saying a 6 months credit period. When I sell to a independent party, 30 days credit period. So what is happening? I am giving some extra credit to my related party. So naturally there will be imputed cost of interest. When the price is same, let us say for $10 for both the transactions, if I am giving some excess credit to my related party, this $10 includes some imputed cost of interest. To that extent, I am passing on some benefit to my related party. So that needs to be adjusted. So curve is very sensitive to variety of factors, not only product related but contractual terms, conditions, everything. We have to see the totality. It's not that product is identical, I am just comparing the price, end of it. The TPO may not accept this unless the other factors are also considered. Now let us say there are other factors, geographical market in which we operate. Now we may be selling to US, the other third party transaction may be with India. Whether this comparison first of all warranted or not. Because if I am selling let us say a t-shirt at 400 rupees in India, the same t-shirt may be able to be sold in US market at $1,000, 1,000 rupees. So whether this pricing difference, that way has to take into consideration the geographical difference also. Because the product remains exactly identical. What t-shirt I am selling in India at 400 rupees, I am able to get the higher price in US market. So one can one say that you are earning 1,000 rupees from the sales to the independent party in US, but when you are selling to somebody else, you are charging 400 rupees some other country, maybe related party. So whether these two comparisons are valid or whether there will be some adjustment because of the geographical difference. I may be selling to a third party in US, I may be having some other entity, my own entity in some other neighboring country, I may be selling at a lesser price, whether this price comparison is valid or whether it requires some adjustment before reaching to any conclusion. So these are different type of things one has to look at, and the level of market. I may be selling to end customer. The related party may not be my end customer, they will be intermediate entity, they may be selling to the end customer later on. So whether I have to give some markup to the entity in between, that is my related party, and when I deal with some third party directly, that markup may not be given. So end user versus intermediate entry, this difference also needs to be considered while analyzing on basis of the cup method. So that's why cup method, though it is easy to understand, and world over the tax authorities are preferable to accept the cup. They are more inclined to use cup as far as possible. In Indian context also there are decisions which are using this cup method over other methods. But one has to see whether this cup is rightly applied. Because once you apply cup in the wrong sense, it can lead to disastrous consequences. It can lead to huge amount of adjustment in the hands of taxpayer in India. So that is the important thing of this cup method. Now when we talk of cup method, it can be both internal cup or external cup. Just for understanding purpose, when we say a manufacturing company sells to related party and a same manufacturing company sells to a non-related company on its own, it is called internal cup. So common, let us say I am a company, I am selling to my related party, I am also selling to a third party in India. So I am a common member which is having all the transactions. That is called internal cup. But whereas we talk of, let us say, totally third party cup. Now let us say I am trying to compare the price charged by me to a related party. The other external cup is if there is a third party seller in India which is selling to third party customer overseas. So that is called a totally independent transaction. What is called external cup when I am not involved in the uncontrolled transaction at all. So that is a totally different comparison. A company or the taxpayer in India whose transactions are being analyzed may not be a party to the transaction between the two uncontrolled enterprises. As I said earlier also in the course of discussion of the cup, this requires high degree of comparability of two transactions, two set of transactions, one controlled transaction, the other uncontrolled transaction. If it is not, it requires some type of adjustments before reaching to any conclusion whether the transactions are at arm's length or otherwise. Then where it is to be used, this method, that we are trying to give some examples. It can be either in sale or purchase of goods or competition of interest. When we say loan given, loan taken, or advance given, advance taken, that type of situation. Payment of royalty and guarantee fees benchmark. That sort of examples can be given for use of the cup method. Not that it is exhaustive, just to understand what are the scenarios in which cup can be applied, either with or without adjustment. See, this we have somewhat considered. What are the different things one can consider and make some adjustments? One is geographical market, quality of the product, then volume we discussed, foreign currency risk that we can just take into consideration. The level of the market I discussed just now, that if my related party is a distributor but I am saying to end user, that may not be a right comparison without any adjustment as such. The contractual terms, then date of transactions. Here I just require your attention to one of the decisions in India, UCB India, which gives the different factors to be considered in application of cup method. There is an exhaustive discussion what factors need to be considered while applying cup. Yes, please.
If the payment terms differ from related party to unrelated party, what kind of adjustment we have to make?
See, basically you have to work out to compute this interest component included in that.
Yeah, but should we have to show to AO that transaction-wise how the payments are made, or?
No, aggregation is possible. In cup method also aggregation is possible. I am not saying each transaction should be analyzed separately. You mean that?
Yeah.
No, each transaction need not be analyzed. I understand volume may not permit each transaction to be analyzed.
Yeah.
Even if we are using SAP, it may not be possible.
Yes.
But our regulation do permit aggregation of transactions. So in spite of applying income, you can fairly compute maybe monthly average, 6 monthly average, whatever is permissible based on the facts of the case. Because if the cyclical movement is removed, let us say, in a particular product, then it may not be possible to take a yearly average, probably. So average is also misleading to some extent. So we have to see which type of data is available for third-party transaction also. Then you can appropriately aggregate at a monthly basis or 2 monthly basis, bi-monthly basis or quarterly basis. It's possible. There is no clear direction from the regulations. It is left to the SSC how to explain the application of curve. They are not given in step by step. That way the indication is there how to apply curve, but that is a broad sense. They are not said whether each transaction or aggregation of transaction. Aggregation is permitted under regulation.
Because many times this export payments get adjusted against the import payments.
That is not possible, but of course not. You are comparing different set of transactions. When I mean application of curve, either you can compare export to export or import to import. I am not saying that export to import.
No, suppose I am exporting to my related party and I am importing also
Yes.
from the same party. So
Same product.
No, different products. But transaction-wise, there is no, you can say, cash flow movement.
So you are netting out the payments against receipts, right?
Yeah,
That way.
somewhere like that.
But even then, export, one has to analyze how, ultimately when you try to set off, let us say import price or your receipt is against you to set off against the payments, then at one point of time you will be setting off, right? It may be running account also, but at one point of time you will be knowing whether payment has come and when it has been accounted for, and which payment is remaining at the end of the year. Or at least in between the period also, how much credit you are enjoying. Because there will be some running account, what you say, something net off, there will be running account. That's what it is. Yeah, but you can still judge, no, today I am raising the invoice. The fact that after 15 days there is no net outstanding, payable by me, means I have received the payment, I have paid, made the payment also. Both the things. Any questions? I'll just give some reference of the case law which are worth reading. At least it can give understanding of how the method is applied, how the TPOs are viewing this curve method. In one of the recent judgment, now it is not that recent, but at least 1 or 2 months back, Trumpe India, which is a Mumbai tribunal judgment, where it has said that in case of capital goods, the import of capital goods, they have said that valuation certificate of a chartered engineer can be the basis or can be the considered as the curve. This method is held by tribunal as valid method of justifying this import price of the capital goods. The other one, I can say that Henkel Adhesives Technologies, where Pune tribunal held that curve is the most appropriate method or the preferred method over TNMM method. Normally, as we discussed, globally the tax authorities are inclined to use curve as the most appropriate method. This is a valid example how the Pune tribunal said that curve is the most preferred method over TNMM method in the given case. Third is in case of super diamonds, which is the High Court in Mumbai has admitted a case where revenues appeal was admitted, and in the tribunal, that the result was the tribunal rejected the use of curve. So against the use of curve, the rejection of curve, the department has gone to High Court. Another one can note that Tata Autocomp, which is a Mumbai High Court judgment following other years, they said a Euribor is an accepted method or is an acceptable and reliable data which can be used for benchmarking the LP transactions or benchmark the LP of a loan transaction. Schutz Disman, SCHUTZ, Schutz Disman Biotech, which is the Ahmedabad bench decision, which has upheld, is the reverse way. They have upheld TNMM or curve. Earlier decisions I said curve was preferred over TNMM, but this in particular case, the tribunal in Ahmedabad held TNMM is the most appropriate in that case over curve.
Sir, what are the citations?
Unfortunately, I am not having citations, but I can mail it to you. And in case of ITW, which is a Delhi bench decision also, I remember there is a decision that curve should be accepted over TNMM method. It is only for guidance how this cup is applied in the Indian context and what are the thoughts of tribunals and high courts. Now, having understood the cup method as such, compare and control price, what are the different problems it can encounter? First, I'll just read out because that is most important. Insufficient market transparency for identifying comparable companies. As we discussed earlier, getting the data of comparable company itself is the challenge. Which is the right comparative, what type of information is available on databases, that is important. Now, in case of this cup, one can understand in Indian context or practical scenario, I can say that there are some databases in India. One is TIPS software, many people must be using it, which give the information of import of various products or materials into India from overseas. So here this method at least gives some information if you want to apply that way, that whether some relevant information can, it has got some problem by itself, but at least one can try to overcome the problem and present it before the tax authority by using the TIPS software. Difficult to accomplish necessary adjustment calculations which eliminate material differences. If our regulations provide that if the adjustments are not possible, the method fails. We have to remember that as a bottom line. If this material adjustment cannot be made, the cup method cannot be the most appropriate method. Now, some adjustment calculations even seem to be mutually contradictory. That also offers a way of competition how to deal with it. Just we have to remember this, that when applying cup method, what adjustment can be made, there can be the counter results also, and what different adjustment need to be considered finally before presenting the case to the tax authority. These are some other judgment in your Sardia Pharmaceutical, which is pending in Mumbai High Court, that is the use of cup versus TNM. Any issue on cup? Can we move to the resale price?
Yes, sir. I have a question.
Yes, please.
Sir, just comparing one transaction. Suppose I purchase, say for example, coal. I purchase coal from my related party during the year at different rates because coal is also price sensitive, and third parties as well. Now, when I look at both the number of transactions, overall I am purchasing at a price, average price, which is less than the third party. But in couple or say, 10 out of 3 transactions, I am paying more than the third party price. So here can cup apply on the average basis, or we can't apply cup?
See, basically, as I said, if there for cyclical fluctuation, one has to adjust for that. Then reasonably, we have to decide what time frame we have to analyze, whether it's quarterly basis, monthly basis. Because normally, when you apply cup in case of this bulk import like this, bulk commodity like this, it should be the comparison of 2 different scenarios, related party versus other related party within the same vicinity as far as time period is concerned. So, if it is time sensitive, then it will be not giving the right results as such. So let us say our related party transaction maybe in the mid of April, let us say. If you are trying to compare the December price, that doesn't give the valid results. So one has to see what is the significance of getting the transaction close to the related party transaction.
Yeah, the transactions are close to each other in month-wise. What happens is I am entering 10 times, both related, non-related. But out of those 10 times, only twice I am exceeding the price of the third party. On the average.
On overall basis is fitting well.
Yeah, overall I am still at, I'm still.
It's good to argue on the overall basis then. Otherwise, only thing about it.
Can I apply cup there?
Yeah, we can apply cup. Only thing about it, we gear up the explanation, why the different quarters or periodicity one we can't decide. If the terms are changing, if the cyclical fluctuation, if the world market is changing, because it is also controlled by some of the indicative prices world over also. It's not that totally independent party transaction were relied upon. Because other terms and conditions also matter, not only the price itself. And quality of code also is very important consideration. It's not easy to apply cup in that sense. When you are talking of cup, I understand that either the overseas entity may be selling to a third party customer in India only, identical product. So that is the comparison you have to make, it will be internal price comparison from the AE perspective. Correct, no?
Yes.
So in that sense, we wanted to see whether periodicity, warrants and other payment terms are also matching, and mainly the quality of the, here not only cup is sensitive, it's politically also sensitive coal.
Just one more question. In all these foreign exports, we are changing the prices maybe from 1st Jan, whereas for Indian customers, we might be changing our prices on 1st April. So there is a gap of 3 months. So how to deal with this?
You can explain, see, TPOs are able to understand the logic of it. It's not that they are totally ours to understand the business realities. The only thing is should be well documented. when you are changing the price, why you are changing the price, what is the necessity of changing the price in between. All things need to be documented. It should not be only color that just to meet the requirement of the TB documents you are changing from mid-year. They will be asking you the logic that why you want to change from this year, that is 1st January in case of certain transactions, and from 1st April for Indian customers. I want us to be ready with the explanation why this gap is emerging. Either in business logic, why this difference is there, or it is just to adjust some price somewhere. That logic has to be there. If it is a genuine transaction, I don't think there will be any problem in explaining this. Because this you have to take the reverse adjustment sort of a thing, that had it not been there, what should have been the price? That way. But we have to have the well-documented thing, that why it is done in different fashion.
So the rate agreement copy will be the sufficient?
Yeah, there will be some negotiation between the two entities. Correspondence will be there, meeting notes will be there. Because this is the major decision, which will not be done at a lower authority. There will be some discussion going on in between in the sales department also. When you are dealing with third-party customers, there will be some ground report also emerging from the marketing department. So it has to be totally a chain of documents. It's not that only board decides and it's the end of it. There has to be some logic in it. Okay. Anything else? We can move to other method. No, yes, no, yes. Now coming to this resale price method. By name itself is very clear. I need not elaborate also. What does it mean? Anybody can explain what is resale price? Correct? Same goods are sold. Either I import from somebody and sell to an independent party in India. So I import from US company and sell to a third party in customer. It's so simple. I just buy and sell. But what is the logic of this resale price method? Important thing is to remember that resale price in the Indian context, before we go to the nitty-gritty also, this method operates only in one direction as far as India is concerned, by regulations. That is, if Indian entity imports the material from a US entity or sells to the Indian customer in India, then resale price is applicable. I will explain how this method is applied. But if it takes a different view, that Indian entity purchases the goods from a third party vendor in India and sells to the overseas entity, related party, this method is not applicable. By definition, it is not possible. So our regulations are defined in a clear fashion that this way RPM applies only in one direction, import of material for selling to the Indian market. That is the way the method has been described. If you strictly apply what is given in the regulations. So reverse is not true, that if taxpayer in India buys goods from a third party vendor in India or sells to the overseas related party, this method is not applicable. At the most one can say cost plus or TNMM, which is not being discussed in this session. Now here, as we will explain, based on the price at which a product that has been purchased from an associated price is resold to an independent enterprise. Here one can say it is not a direct method of justifying the arm's length price. It is a very, very indirect way of justifying the arm's length price. In the beginning of the session we started, what is the mandate given to the taxpayer is justify that his international transactions are at arm's length. Now when we talk of import of material from the AE, what is the transaction to be justified at arm's length is import of material. So when we talk of resale price, as the people also explain, we import from somebody at price and we sell it at a certain price, the difference is the gross profit. So how is it going to help in justifying the import price? So that's why it is an indirect method of justifying this resale price, that is import price. I am supposed to justify my import price from the related party, but I am going to the gross profit made by me in the whole transactions. One limb is associated with the related party, the other limb of transaction is associated with the third party. So I am supposed to benchmark my results as far as AE purchase is concerned, not the third party sale. But we are going in a reverse fashion. We go to the sale price, that is Indian entity is selling to the independent party, that sale price minus the gross profit, let us say, which is logically required to be computed, and then we work out this import price to justify that my import price is not excessive compared to the third party import price, if at all it is there. I'll just explain how it is done. This is a step-by-step approach. First, determine the gross profit margin earned in comparable uncontrolled transaction. One has to always remember what transaction I have to justify even using RPM method is import of my goods from my related party. That is the transaction to be tested, not the third party sale transaction. Only the mechanism is operating from the third party sale transaction. First, determine the gross profit margin earned in comparable uncontrolled transactions. So, third party transaction, one has to identify what is the third party transaction earning the margin net off. Then subtract the appropriate gross margin and expenses from the applicable resale price. The remainder will be the arm's length price with the control entity. Now let us say, this gives the example. First let us say 20 is the gross margin earned by third party transactions. Correct? Not my testable transaction. Comparables are earning 20%. Let us say 20% will go on sales. So here we will compute 20% on sales in our sales. We derive that margin that you deduct and arrive at the remainder will be arm's length price, what is to be compared. That arm's length price you compare with actual my transaction price at which I am actually importing the goods from my related party. Now let us say hypothetically my arm's length price worked out to be 60 whereas my import transaction is at 50. So one naturally will conclude that my transaction is at arm's length. But in the event my actual transaction price is 65 and arm's length price indicates 60, I am paying $5 extra to my related party. So my import price is more and it can be concluded that it is not at arm's length. And to that extent I will be suffering transfer pricing adjustment. So that is a simple logic. One has to understand what is the third party margin that you deduct from the total. You work out the what is arm's length price that you compare with the actual transaction value. If there is excess, then that will be remaining, that I am overpaying and it amounts to adjustment. If my arm's length price is less than that way, it is in the order. There is a simple way of operation. To just example, this is now sale price to uncontrolled entity is 1 lakh, cost of goods sold 85, arm's length gross margin is 15%, arm's length price is 85, purchase price for associate enterprise. Based on this, can anybody say that what is the conclusion here? Based on what we just discussed, associate price actual transaction price is 92,000, whereas arm's length price is 85,000. Anybody? Correct? So it requires adjustment in the hands of the taxpayer. Yes, please.
Expenses to be included in the cost of goods.
See, it will be including all the expenses. See, this is a gross level comparison. One has to understand the difference between net level and gross level. In gross level, it will be only cost of goods sold. And going by our definition of by Institute of Chartered Accountants also, cost of goods means including custom duty. That people normally tend to miss out, but actually custom duty is a part of cost of goods sold. It is a landed cost, one can say.
Freight and insurance.
To the extent of freight inward one can include, going by our institute guidelines, that freight inward is a part of cost of goods sold. We are not going to the profit and loss portion, we restrict only to the trading account. We need to refresh our knowledge on the accounting as far as trading and profit and loss account is concerned. So people who are well versed with accounting also be helped in transfer analysis. Now, as I said, the method by name itself indicates is a buy and sell transaction. There will be import or sale in the Indian market, and the reverse is not true that we are discussing. Now, what can happen? I just explained the difference between your pricing at gross and net level we referred. Now, let us take a situation in case of a distributor. At gross level, our margin is more, and we are at arm's length. Let us say our gross profit is more than the average profit charged by the other comparable companies. Now, all of a sudden, at gross level I am okay, but when I compare at net level, net profit level, my profit is negative. Let us assume that situation, which is generally the case in many of the companies in the distributor, which is generally happening on practical front. So what is the conclusion one can draw? At gross level, yes, for transfer pricing purposes, using RPM method, I am fair, and my transactions of import are at arm's length. Then what is the logic in explaining that gross level you are okay, but net level you have huge losses compared with the same set of comparables which you are using for the RPM method? Can one say that there is some problem or no? Because you are already benchmark at gross level, you are already at arm's length as far as import is concerned. So what will the conclusion arising out of it? Anybody else? At gross we are okay, but at net our profitability is a questionable thing. And huge losses. What it can indicate?
Huge advertisement.
Pardon?
Huge advertisement expense.
Correct? Anything else? Correct? So this is the precise issue that is in litigation, and the matter is in Supreme Court. we can understand the importance of this concept, mainly in terms of distributors and other things. At gross level you are okay, but net level you are not okay, because there is a huge amount of expenses, maybe because of variety of reasons. It may be establishment expenses, it may be advertisement, marketing, promotion expenses, which is generally categorized as AMP expenses. That is a huge issue by itself, and there are some decisions, maybe people have already led in terms of LG Electronics or Maruti Suzuki, which is in, now that matter is in Supreme Court, which has been ordered and order is awaited. So what is the significance of the AMP cost? I will just explain one thing what one has to understand. What is with reference to the Maruti Suzuki decision? What is happening? Everybody knows Maruti India Limited earlier, Maruti Udyog Limited, correct? Later on, the Japanese company became a partner in that, joint venture partner. Later on, still they introduced the logo, correct? Earlier it was only Maruti, then it was including Suzuki logo also. You might have seen some of the cars which M logo in front, Maruti. It all of a sudden changed to S, that is Suzuki, correct? And everything is actually discussed in that order. It is very, very interesting. People can, if you have some time, go to the decision, Maruti Suzuki Limited decision. It is a very nice decision. What is happening is the TPO caught hold of this case, and they say you are incurring losses because of the main reasons, or your margin is that will low compared to the other comparables, because you are incurring huge amount of AMP cost. And this AMP cost is not benefiting Indian entity, but you are virtually marketing the brand of a foreign entity, which is Suzuki Limited. So it's creation of a brand which is in question, which is challenged by the TPO. You are helping the overseas entity for building its brand in India. So that is the whole thing which is objected in Maruti Suzuki Limited. All this is very, very important. LG Electronics decision also relevant. If it is possible, now what is the way out here? How to prove that my expenses were desperately required for my business? Then one has to analyze these expenses, AMP cost, and segregate between which is product related, which is really marketing related. If it is relating to sale of product, one can say it is not leading to the creation of intangibles or creating of the brand of overseas entity. So you are not helping the foreign entity creating this brand here. If you are able to demonstrate that these expenses are relating to the sale of the product. If it is other than this, it will pertain to other than sale of goods, it is quite possible that if you can consider that is leading to AMP cost, which will be disallowed, not only get disallowed, it will be required to be earned a appropriate markup from the overseas entity. So that is the magnitude of this dispute. At gross level you are okay, but net level you are okay. The matter does not stop there. At import, that way import transaction may be at arm's length, but this huge amount of expenses which Indian entity is incurring, because of which its net margin is dipping and probably negative, it will be questioned and it will be required to demonstrate that is not leading to or helping the creation of the foreign entity's brand in India. So that is a very important transaction to be analyzed. Now it has many problems at PM itself, because first of all, identical and similar functional risk profile transactions are important to apply this resale price. Gross margin we are working, so we need to have the like-to-like comparison. Then accounting practices, there is no standard prescribed even in our regulations also, that in the accounting policy also. How to, as he rightly asked, what constitutes the cost of goods sold. That one has to be very sure what is the cost component included in tested party transaction, what is the cost component included in the third party transaction being compared. So if there is a difference in this, naturally the analysis will go haywire. The conclusion will not be appropriate. One has to be very sure what is the constituting the cost of goods sold. In same thing applies on the sales side also. Sometimes some people will be including excise price also, excise value also. Some will be saying net of excise. All these factors need to be considered in while applying RPM method. If there is change of stock valuation, that also one has to account for it. These are the relevant things that the ordinary decision also, same thing was discussed, and of course here the decision was that at gross level, L'Oreal India was okay and they were meeting the requirement of the law. But later on in subsequent case, the same decision has been remanded for decision making on AMP cost. These were the other decisions, the metal toys and Quark systems and etc. Textronics etc. and other things. This was just a brief on this resale price matter. Only one or two important things I said that now L'Oreal also, which I refer here, is a Mumbai High Court judgment in case of L'Oreal India also, and in subsequent year also, Bombay High Court following this L'Oreal judgment in the old case, it has decided the matter that RPM accepted over 50 nm metal. There is another case, Luxottica India eyewear, which is again upholds the use of RPM over 10 mm. However, in that case also, as far as the decision on AMP is concerned, it has been remanded in line, we discussed in the line of L'Oreal and other LG decision also. Other decision is where, of course, they are generally following this STAR judgment and L'Oreal judgment and LG Rental judgment at Amdocs Business Services and the Pune ITT judgment. Can we move from RPM?
Just
Any questions? Yeah.
If our gross profit margin changes due to freight, you can say due to air freight or detention or demurrage like things, then
How gross margin will change?
because if we are importing, then suppose due to some cases we have to do some air freight, some transshipment cases, we might have to incur some detention, demurrage cost due to some abnormal events.
So abnormalities have to be adjusted anyway.
So all abnormalities.
Of course, have to be adjusted.
So can we say if regularly we are
But abnormal in what sense? Well, why it is considered normally freight is normal? Why it should be abnormal? Whether it is air freight or railway freight or whatever.
suppose due to some documentation issues or from, you can say, logistics point of view, there are some problems happen and we have to bear some additional demurrage or detention charges and transshipment mode and like that. So anyway that we have to bear that cost because we are importing that.
But normally to debited to profit loss account, these type of things. That may not be happening in the gross compensation.
That is a part of the freight component.
No, one has to see cost of goods, so that's something what we are including cost of goods. So normally to be purchase of goods. In fact, the freight etc. may not be debited to cost of goods, so right? In your accounting also,
Yeah.
that will be part of profit loss account. So it won't affect.
Right.
It won't affect them. It will just purchase of material. At the most custom duty, one can say. So the subsequent transport etc. may not be included. That will be part of profit loss account. Anything else? Can we move to last method? Here, it is again the method names are so derived that it explains the method by itself. Cost plus means by name also you can say total cost one has to consider. On that you apply the arm's length margin and derive the right margin, that is right price. That is the arm's length price. That is the general rule. Now let us say 100 is your cost base, your arm's length margin let us say 10%, your price becomes 110. That is 100, apply 10% margin on that, price becomes 110. What is tested here in cost plus? Not the price. Here what is tested is whether margin of 10% is right or wrong. Now let us say I am selling the goods to my related party at 110, where my markup is 10% on cost. Here also you have to find out the third party comparables. If the third party comparables indicate that right margin should have been 115, that way 15%, so my price would have worked out to 115, not 110. To that extent, I am undercharging my related party by 5%. Correct? So there it will by itself lead to adjustment in the hands of the taxpayer. You are underpricing the sale of goods to your related party. So that is the crux, that we are comparing not the price here as against what we are discussing in case of method curve, where we have the direct price to price comparison with some other factors to be considered. Yes, please.
In this method, if the market is competitive and we are trying to go into the terms of turnover, then definitely the person who's trying to increase turnover will keep his margin low. So in that case, how can we defend our case in front of tax authorities? Because he will say that you are charging a lesser margin, but the motive is to get a larger market share.
See, again it comes to the business strategy. When I see government or tax authority are not saying that you can't have your own business strategies. What they expect, and you should be giving a proper documented case to them. When the entity was established, to which market you want to sell, why there is a difference in price, why you are charging X price to a related party, whereas you are charging some different price to the independent party. Why there is a difference? If you are able to demonstrate that reason with some documented evidence, they are ready to be accepted. But sometimes what happens, the taxpayer, though it is a logical case, they may not be able to give the supporting documentation. In that case, there is an issue that TPO also, their hands are tied, they can't help you. If you are able to demonstrate, okay, this is my business plan, this way I want to move my business, my break-even is this, I want to move that way, and my price to third party is going to be changed like this. All these factors, if you are demonstrated with document, just maybe minutes or internal discussion, marketing information, brochure, everything, whatever you can lay hands on as far as your own document is concerned, that will be a great assistance. It can either be operated in both situations, if foreign entity is coming to India or Indian MNC going abroad. In both scenarios it is possible that what documentation needs to be supported. Only thing that we have to understand what is the distinction between cost plus and TNMM. Of course, TNMM is not the method right now we are discussing, but there is not much difference in cost plus and TNMM. Because subsequent sessions on TNMM, but I will just explain the basic thing which is to be considered in cost plus and which is not in the TNMM. Cost plus, if you see our definition itself, that way method will be indicated in Rule 10b, which says this method, when I say in our example 100 plus 10%, so 100 is the cost base. Now, how this cost base itself is to be arrived? That is the question in that way cost plus method. Our regulation, if you minutely read, it is considering the cost of production. So cost of manufacture, one can say. It stops at that. Cost plus method, as per our regulations, computes the cost up to the production level. It doesn't include the subsequent expenses, what is generally referred to as selling, general and administration expenses. So that's why this comparison becomes more and more very difficult in our situation. I will explain why this comparison using cost plus method is very, very difficult and virtually tends out to be TNMM in certain cases. Now let us say in a manufacturing situation. Now by definition also one can understand cost plus is more appropriate in manufacturing situation. When you are going to manufacture of a product for sale in India or overseas. Now, if we strictly apply the definition that cost of production level, how to find the cost of production level? As far as related party, our tested party is concerned, it's possible to identify the cost at whatever low level you can, because it's our own set of documentation, our set of financials, we can that will dice it, analyze it, and you can find out the cost of production. Direct cost of production. Up to the price also we can compute what is the right cost of competition. There is direct cost, material cost, indirect cost, everything included up to production level. But whether the same exercise is possible to be done in case of comparables, that is a question. Because even if you use this databases, ProVas, Capitaline, it gives broadly the financials of the comparable companies. So unless and until you are able to find the equal level analysis, that cost plus means cost of production, level cost in case of tested party, same thing applicable in case of third party comparables, it is not possible to apply cost plus. So that is the main hindrance in applying the cost plus. You may be able to find the right comparables maybe, or dealing in the same product, same industry, same aging, everything may be same, but the fact that if you are not able to find out the cost of production, in case of that comparable, it may be very, very difficult or impossible to apply the cost plus method. In that sense, it may turn out to be ultimately use of TNMM, using the total cost, whether it is the cost of production level or even SG expenses added to that. So then it becomes a total cost plus means virtually it comes to TNMM, transaction net margin method on entity level basis. So that is the distinction one has to remember. When we talk cost plus method, the cost means cost gathered up to cost of production level. It doesn't include this SG expenses. That one has to be very sure how the cost per method is prescribed in our regulations. And that's how it distinguishes from TNMM method. Now here factors to consider, cost should be including all costs associated with the process, manufacturing, provisional services up to manufacturing stage, like raw material, labor, illicit factory, etc. Then what are the precautions to be taken? Profile of the parties, high degree of functional comparison is a given thing, asset comparison is important, and accounting differences should be considered. If the comparables having different set of policies as far as incurring of costs and accounting for the cost, then it is possible that this method cannot be applied. Here how the method is applied: compute the direct and indirect costs incurred in control transactions, there is a tested part transaction, determine the normal gross profit margin earned in similar uncontrolled transactions, and apply the margin in step 2 on amount arrived in case of step 1. then this is determine the arm's length price. That's what we just discussed. Is the example. I'm not going into the example because we have just understood how the cost plus is applied. Now, as we just discussed this, pre-checks before selecting the CPM ensure that inefficiencies do not result in higher profit and cost increases. Also must be taken into account that there is often no direct link between the amount of the cost incurred and the market price and arm's length price. It requires extensive information about the cost base used in comparing the markups. Reasonable adjustment may not be possible when looking at external comparable companies. When you have reliance on the companies which are not our related party or third party total control transaction, then it is not easy to get the appropriate information and data for analysis purposes. Then becomes a very, very challenging situation in application of the cost plus method. An important another thing is that of course here there are some judgments, but they are not directly on cost plus. More or less, as far as cost plus method is concerned, in our context, these decisions are more on the selection of comparables than on the method itself. Most of the decisions, if you analyze, which have been pronounced so far, they are on the selection of comparables. Whether it is a right comparable, wrong comparable, functional comparability, volume, etc., everything is turnover related filter. This is purely on that. Neither the tribunal nor the High Court have decided on the actual application of the cost plus method. Because maybe the method is by itself clear, only thing that there are some given problems as we discussed, the availability of data at cost of production level. So that decisions are not on the method itself, but on the selection of comparables. That opposing the one decision there hope or something where it is discussed at cost plus method how they are applying to some extent. But there is no elaborate discussion on that, but there is some hope or some judgment is there. Now here we are just trying to summarize any issue on cost plus before we summarize. Anybody not understanding cost plus method? These slides will try to summarize the three methods what we have just discussed. First curve, this method compares the transfer price directly with similar products sold in an independent uncontrolled situation. RPM, when a buyer in an intercompany transaction in turn sells to an independent party, the RPM compares the gross profit margin with that achieved in a similar uncontrolled transaction. And CPM, but for this method, the gross profit earned by the intercompany seller is compared with a similar independent transaction. This approach is typically used where goods are manufactured or assembled and then sold within the group. In this instance, the goods compared do not have to be identical but should perform similar functions, which is different than the curve method. There we said the goods should be identical. Here that is the only advantage, but it has got associated with the various other problems. Now, this is the other method. When we discuss this other 5 prescribed method, this is the residuary method, one can say. If other methods are failing, then government has thought it fit that they will be giving some liberty to the taxpayer, use other method, that is, which is not prescribed in the regulations. Then 10EB prescribes this mechanism, how this other method is to be applied. Other method by itself is not defined anyway. It is the liberty given to taxpayer to determine which method they are going to follow. It can be the combination of these 5 methods, or any of these methods. It can be totally different method other than 5 methods, but it is left to the taxpayer to decide what type of method they want to devise, so long as they are able to explain how the application of that method enables itself in reaching to a conclusion that is transactions at arm's length price. Whether it is a valid method, one has to demonstrate before the tax authority in the case of the transpassing audit. So there is no direction on other method, how it is to be devised, how it should be applied, it will be using what type of data, what are the assumptions, nothing of the sort. It is totally left to the mercy of the taxpayer, so long as he is able to establish that what other method I am devising is correct, and they are able to demonstrate before the tax authority that this method is reaching to logical conclusions, that is the method they can use. And so on. So far there are no judgments on that. Anything one can say, valuation methods, etc. may be considered as a part of other methods. There can be some combination of cost plus method coupled with TNMM method, or curve method coupled with TNMM method. People are using this curve versus TNMM situation in case of pricing of certain products, maybe steam generation, electricity generation. These type of methods are possible to be used in combination. Now, way forward is just to summarize, the most appropriate method to be selected and applied based on the facts and circumstances. That's what you have said. This is applicable in case of all the 3 methods we discussed. Each year is a separate year. One important thought that one has to see, that once I select a method, is it mandatory for taxpayer to use that method for further all the years, which is not correct. It is based on facts and circumstances of each year. I may be using cup in this year, that does not prohibit me from using other method in the subsequent year. If the facts support that change of method is warranted, taxpayer is free to use different methods. Only thing that what can be the issue is that if the tax authority questions it at the time of TP audit level, then one should be able to demonstrate why I am changing the method. There is no bar under the regulation to use a different method. But we have to see the relationship with the tax authorities also, and based on if the let us say transaction and entities are not changing, then what is the logic in changing the method? Then one should be able to demonstrate. And what happens if the TPO rejects the method applied by SSE in the case here 1 year, and in the next year the method of the TPO results in product the positive itself. So that also I said is a TPO audit issue, that there is no bar in applying a different method altogether. Thanks so much. Thanks for paying attention. Thank you.
We have 5 minutes for question and answers.
Yes, please.
One can, just now as you rightly said, can one change the method every year by justifying?
That yes, this is why I have changed the method, because from in the tax audit report under the normal circumstances, there is a column that if you are changing from cash system of accounting to mercantile system of accounting, you are supposed to give what is the ultimate effect had it been the other way. Is it possible under the transfer pricing system to change the method every year by demonstrating logically that yes, this is why I have changed the method?
Yeah. Going by the provisions or regulation as I discussed, it is quite possible to change the method each year. In fact, in my own case, there is one of my taxpayer or client, I have got a case in which each year there is a different method, as you rightly say, for valid reasons. So today I may be using curve, tomorrow KNN, electron, RP, whatever it is. It depends on the transaction, the details of transaction, and as you rightly said, if there is a prominent understanding and requirement to change the method, which is warranted by circumstances, fact of the case, etc., there is no bar under regulations to change, not to change the method. Only thing that I said, logically one has to explain for the tax authority in the case of the transfer pricing audit, and why it is required to change the method.
When we are comparing the transaction with our related party, the price, and then we are comparing the price with the uncontrolled related party. So at that point of time, if my related party somehow is in US, so the unrelated party price which I am comparing should also be in the same geography, or how can we justify this? Because it is not possible.
I understand that as I discussed in the presentation also, if there are some geographical differences, as I explained by some example of sale of t-shirts in India, I may be selling at let us say 400 rupees in India, but if in US I am able to sell at 1000 rupees. Does it mean that I am selling something extra, or let us say an extension of that, if I am selling to US related party at 1000, if I am selling to some Singapore entity at 600 rupees. Does it mean that I am selling at 400 in India, 600 in Singapore, 1000 in US? Means when I am selling to Singapore at 600 rupees, I am underpricing it, which is not the case. One has to just see the logic of it, whether the market demands there, whether the prevailing market in that geographical region, that is also important. Only then it is possible to have some geographical adjustment. Because I am saying maybe that is the only price I can demand from Singapore market. Whereas in US market I am able to get 1000 rupees. So there will be competition selling the goods at 1000. Whereas in Singapore the competition may be selling only at 600. It may not be easy for me to overprice my goods. I am not getting the market share. So one has to understand what is the business logic and what is the prevailing circumstances in different geographical market, so that we can make some appropriate adjustments.
But how can we, this is an example of one t-shirt, but when we compare a huge organization and their business, how can we justify to a revenue authority or a
Yeah, it is possible to make some geographical, some formulas and all that, standard of living, everything is possible. We can make some adjustment logically in rupee terms and that way, dollar terms, that for that matter. It is possible to demonstrate the TPO.
Okay.
And they are accepting that. It's not that they are totally rejecting the idea of adjustment at all. They are also aware that there will be difference in the prices charged in different prices. There are segments. India may be able to say that 400, Singapore 600, US 1000. That by itself does not mean that transactions are not announced.
Excuse me. My TPO has accepted the domestic transfer pricing rate at which I am selling it to the associated enterprise. But the same product I am exporting it to US or say Singapore, as you rightly just now said, at a little lower rate. Then would the I'm not talking about any other comparison, but the TPO would say that in domestic market, in domestic transfer pricing, you have sold it at this rate. Why you are doing it at this rate and the international transactions?
See, it is quite possible. The comparison TPO will ask, first of all, whether the standard question they can ask whether you are having these independent transactions. Or only from SDT perspective, I can say your related party in India will be required to demonstrate that it is an arm's length, not the seller as such. Only for if I understand correctly what you are explaining, if you are a vendor in India also, your purchasing entity will be duty bound to demonstrate under SDT that is purchase transaction from your entity are arm's length. Your entity will not be subjected to SDT in India. Only for comparison purposes, TPO can very well ask that if you are selling to US market, to your related party, are you selling to somebody in India? So that one can say you is a domestic related party. But are you also selling to third party in India?
Yes, to a larger extent, maybe equally.
Correct. So that comparison TPO can certainly ask for it. Are you selling to a third party entity in India? And that comparison has to be made as far as the sale price chart to US entity is concerned. And you will be required to demonstrate to the TPO that why you are charging less to the US entity. Then I can say that we have to explain the level of market, etc. If the US entity is a trader, let us say, may not be the end user, your customer in India may be end user, all these arguments has to be built in.
No, yours also I am selling it to my associated enterprise only.
Correct, but they may be distributor, they may not be end user there. They may be a trader, they may be on selling to the end user. Whereas your third party customer in India may itself be an end user. I am not sure whether that is a fact.
No, maybe 5% difference is there. I can't say exactly the same.
So, I'm saying one has to figure out what are the facts and circumstances when you are selling to third party customer in India, and that comparison bound to happen with the sales to the US entity. And one has to explain the logic why you are charging less to the US entity.
So domestic transfer pricing is accepted.
Of course, because you are selling to the third party at maybe same price.
Same price or maybe.
Because as I said, from purchaser will be, in your case, the purchasing related party in domestic market will be required to demonstrate. And since you are already selling to a third party at the same price, there may not be any problem because they are purchasing at the same price. But when you are selling to the overseas related party at lesser price, your company will be having some issues to demonstrate how you are selling at a lesser price than what you are charging to the domestic related party as well as the domestic third party.
Thank you, Vishwanathan. I request members to give my devote.